stalling or waiting doesn't protect you. It could just waste time, and our time is somewhat limited. Thank you so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. So happy, as always, to welcome back Joni Caldwell Lerner, the motivational coach, dating coach, relationship expert, and the author of Stop, Look, Choose. Joni, thank you so much for being here again.
It is my pleasure. I'm so excited. And as you know, first of all, I love being with you. And second of all, one of my great loves in life is coaching. And if we can throw some little ideas or tools or whatever it is out there into the world to make people's lives better, then I'm all for it.
Well, and that's exactly what we want to do today. I again came across some information I thought was incredibly relevant for not just our demographic, but what you and I talk about. And that's 5 avoidant excuses in dating. Let's look at these, what I called avoidant excuses, but in some sense, they're couched in fear. So anyway, we'll talk about that. The first one here: I don't want to seem needy. I'm hesitant to go out there. I don't come across as needy.
Okay. This one has a couple of layers. I'm glad you started with this one. It is not needy to want companionship. It is not needy to desire connection. It is not needy to want a relationship or romance. It is also not needy to ask for what you want. What is needy is to think that a relationship or another human being is going to make you whole. And that energy, guaranteed, whether you say the right things or not, it will be felt. So be very clear about what your intention is. Be very clear about, is there something I need to work on within myself? Because happiness really is an inside job.
Yeah, and one of the points that I thought was so interesting that they brought out is that people don't want to admit they're lonely. And that's one thing that we need to recognize, if not just in ourselves. Yeah, of course, we might be lonely. Maybe we're widowed. Maybe we haven't dated in forever. Maybe the divorce really hurt us. There is loneliness in just about everybody's life to some extent.
Yeah.
And it's okay to acknowledge that. That's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. And after a divorce, especially if you didn't ask for it, and after the loss of a spouse with whom you've been for a decade or 4, there is a grieving process. And there is a loneliness because that human was in your space, in your energy, in your field. And so there is a healing process that has to happen. And in that, there is a loneliness or feeling alone because that space was filled and now it's not. There's a vacuum. So what we don't want is people rushing out to fill the vacuum with a rebound relationship. Please take the time to heal. There is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. And don't let what you think you're going to come across as keep you from dating.
And really give yourself the grace to date. Rarely will you walk out the front door and find your next person. So it could be 2 or 3 people in before you find your match. Give
Yeah.
yourself a little grace.
Joni, the next point here, this goes directly to a segment we did on simmer dating. I'll link to it. But another excuse that we make, that some people make, let's take it slow. What does that really mean?
Let's pick it apart a little bit. Taking it slow could mean I really don't want to get vulnerable. I really don't want to get that involved. I'm really not that interested. You could be a placeholder. Taking it slow could mean what it says. I just need a little time to get used to dating again, to get used to caring about somebody else's wants and needs. There could be, and I think I mentioned this in that segment, is maybe it's just about foundation building. Because I really don't recommend leaping into a relationship and certainly not leaping into bed.
I think one of the big things about taking it slow that I think we need to recognize also, that it could be a big red flag if somebody says that to you, or if somebody makes that excuse, that it's not necessarily always a good thing. Because if they were genuinely interested, they would be excited about wanting to see you again or excited about moving forward. And I think sometimes we maybe don't want to admit to that or don't want to see that and then end up wasting a whole lot of time or allowing them
Yeah,
to
but
string us along.
excited, but at a healthy pace.
Yes.
You don't want a love bomber. You don't want the narcissist will just suck you right in the first 5 minutes and tell you everything you ever wanted to know. What you want is a healthy pace of getting to know you, having shared experiences, connecting over and over and over again. If taking it slow means I call you every 3 weeks, I mean, that's okay for that other person if that's what they want, but that's really not what I want in a
Right.
dating situation. So it's
Right.
really internally, what's true for you? What feels right?
Yeah.
I want you to all to get out there and really trust your gut and trust your instincts.
Number three here, I believe you referred to this already, is that shouldn't we build an emotional connection first before moving forward? Don't we want to make sure we have an emotional connection? Is that
Okay,
a
so heart, that could be the cart and the horse kind of thing. To it's like love at first sight doesn't exist. True love is built through shared experiences. Again, true love is built through connections. True love is supporting each other. True love is sharing values. You can begin building connection immediately, but that doesn't mean it's love. And when they're talking about taking time to have an emotional connection, there could be some psychological things, some healing that one or the other needs to do, whoever's saying this. It could be they're scared, whatever it is. But man, if you've got the skills to say, hey, tell me more about that. Where is this actually coming from? What is it you really want? And I don't, it doesn't need to be the guy or the girl saying that, but having those conversations are very powerful.
I thought that was an interesting point again, because if somebody says, I mean, there's two things here. You might think, I think we need to have we don't have emotional connection. And to me, that's somewhat fear-based. Or maybe you're looking for ways to protect yourself. But if somebody says it to you, I think it's a red flag, because there's no real answer here. There's no black and white. It's like what you said. The only way to get it is to actually interact, be together, have a
Right.
relationship.
So let's
So,
discern, let's do a little discerning here. We're not saying don't be attracted. You want to be attracted right out. There has to appear to be some sort of connection when you first date. And then the emotional connection is a different level. Emotional connection is built, but actually, just attracted to their voice, attracted to the way they look, attracted to their humor, attracted to these are the beginning attractions. The emotional attraction that you're talking about is something deeper.
and they're a little bit of a warning, which I kind of agree with. If you really focus on this connecting, you might end up on both sides of the friend zone, by not letting romance take over, or having this emotional connection predominantly in your mind.
I see
Again,
what you're saying too. They're saying you need the emotional connection before you have a romantic connection.
well, there's, yes, exactly, that
Oh,
they're holding off romance until they feel that that's the
yeah.
escapes.
Yes, yeah. I see where you got to the friend zone too. Makes total sense.
Another great one here, and so much on the minds of everyone, and different advice and translations every time.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get me into bed. And the point is, what's wrong with that? And not saying to get into bed, but they were making the point, and I agree. You worry more if he doesn't. What's wrong? And then how you handle it is another thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because in our 20s, I remember my mother saying, all he wants is one thing. He,
Right,
meaning any he.
right.
And then I talked to a male coach who said basically that's all that's ever on their minds. These phrases come from somewhere. But now we're talking about people who are over 50,
Mm-hmm.
over 60, over 70. I
Mm-hmm.
have a new client that's almost 80 years old, and he's just starting to date again. And the first question was, am I too old? I'm like, no, you're not too old. However, that he's just trying to get in your pants is probably not going to be true over 65 or 70. So it really is on case basis. And honesty is critical. So here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for companionship. I'm looking for romance. I am not sexually active. I mean, actually be honest right up front. Or if she may say, I am sexually active and I really, want that. And he may go, yay, woo, but not tomorrow. I'm just saying, these are conversations that you might have at this age bracket that you wouldn't have had at the age of 20 because there's an assumption, right? Everything's working. So yeah, intimacy, this is really important, I think, for our demographic. Finding a way to connect intimately, emotionally, and energetically. Now, if physically is in there too, then more power to you. But those first three are so powerful. I want people out there to focus more on to stop putting so much freaking pressure on yourselves. We are not 20 years old, but we can connect and love and
Yeah.
be intimate on these other levels as well.
Yeah. And if somebody really is just interested in sex, I mean, that'll reveal itself quickly anyway, to where you can make other decisions. But the whole idea of wanting to get into, I mean, that's what distinguishes a relationship, from a friendship. So the whole idea of wanting to get into bed is not necessarily, maybe we put too much emphasis on that being a bad thing. So yeah,
But
again,
it's neither bad nor good. It's
mhm.
what do you want?
Yeah,
You, whoever you are, what do you want? And you can actually say, dude, you act like the only thing you want from me is sex. Is that
yeah,
true?
yeah.
I call them out. Or it could be the woman doing. I mean,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah, it's not all.
yeah, because I'm really looking for a higher level of friendship and romance and companionship. And there's a spiritual component to that. Just sex, there's no well, you can have some spiritual experiences, but there's not a spiritual experience to just, getting down and dirty.
All right, then finally here, the last one, the last excuse, perhaps a fear-based excuse, is that the last person rushed me and it really turned me off. That I feel rushed, that you're using this as an excuse to, hold somebody back. But what is that again really saying?
If the person is actually conscious and you
Mhm,
say, I'm feeling rushed, to be honest with you, it feels like you're pushing a little bit in this area.
mhm,
And if the person has any level of consciousness, he or she can say, whoa, I'm sorry. That's really not what I intended. And I do think you're right because I feel like I'm in the last third of my life and there's no time to waste. And I really like you and I really think
yeah,
you're amazing. And so, yeah,
mhm,
I probably was. I apologize.
mhm,
So, how would you rather I show up, or what is it that I can do differently that would make you feel more comfortable? That's
mhm,
a conscious human being. So the other part, now I'm saying, I feel like you're rushing me, so there could be a couple of things. One is, maybe they did have a bad experience.
mhm,
And again, you know me, and for our demographic and older, it's sometimes hard to ask for help. Therapy was not a thing. You don't talk about your feelings, you just suck it up, buttercup, and keep going. But if you've got some stuff that's getting in the way of you connecting with this person across from you because you're
mhm.
feeling rushed because you don't have great boundaries, or maybe you have some trauma that you experienced, either one of those, you could get some coaching, you could get some counseling. How do you get through that so that you're not standing in your own way?
Well, and another scenario is simply that again, if you hear it, if you're on the receiving end of it, that they're not that interested. That somebody who really wants is interested in moving forward. They're not going to feel rushed. They're going to wish that you had texted them back yesterday. They welcome you contacting them more often than not. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. And
Yes.
sometimes we have to admit that to ourselves too.
Yeah. Well, and so there's another scenario. Maybe they are an avoidant. There's
Mm-hmm.
an avoidant attachment who's going to like be very put off by emotional intimacy or scared of, you talked about fear a little earlier.
Mhm.
It could be an avoidant reaction. So the point is, we've just thrown out three or four possibilities. We don't know. We have no idea. But you out there need to look inside, see what's actually happening. What are you feeling? Because feelings are a real indicator if you are in flow or not. And if it's hard, if a relationship is hard, I don't want to say run,
Yeah.
but yeah, relationships do not have to be hard. Every relationship, Silke, everything that happens in a relationship is an opportunity for you to grow. We've talked about you and Paul, the opportunities to grow. We've talked about me and John. There are always opportunities to grow if we choose to be conscious and see it that way, as opposed to, well, it's his fault and it's his fault and she did this and she did that and a victim, victim, victim. What's true about me, and all of you out there know that sometimes I'll go off on these tangents, but sometimes stuff needs to be said. So,
That's funny. Well, there's lots to think about. I thought each of these points really, we did go deeper than what is on the surface. That, these are things that we all tend to think about. Are we doing it right or not? And perhaps there are different ways of thinking about it that we haven't until today discussed. I think the takeaway that came across in the notes that I found is that stalling or waiting doesn't protect you, that it could just waste time, and our time is somewhat limited. What do you say to
and
that?
yes, and it's fear-based. So please, please, folks, do not live your life from fear. Do not, in fact, I want you to run toward it. If you're afraid of something, figure it out. What is that about? Where's the gift of power for me? Because if you can figure it out, you then take that power back and you can go into the next situation feeling more confident. I want you all to go out and live your most alive lives every single day.
Lots to think about. And if you're thinking about all this and you need some additional help, call Joni. All of Joni's contact information is below in the show notes, including a Calendly link that's just for second act viewers. So once again, Joni, thank you, and I look forward to our next conversation on Second Act TV.